Welcome to this week's episode of the CPG View, the number one CPG information source for global omnichannel leaders. Avi, thank you so much for joining this week's episode of the CPG View. I know you and I have been trying to get this on the calendar for quite some time now, and you, my friend, are in India, so our time zones are a little bit different, and I appreciate you staying up in the evening with us here to record. Before we get started, would you mind introducing yourself and the company you're with?
Yeah, so my name is Abhinava Banerjee. Call me Avi. So I work with PepsiCo and I'm a part of the strategy and transformation team. And I'm building global capabilities and services for e-commerce for all of PepsiCo, both US and international, and doing it through our 5 capability centers across the continents.
Awesome. And I did spend some time with some members of your team. Was it maybe a month ago? Great team you have there, very engaged. You definitely have hired some very smart folks. I just hats off to you. I didn't tell you I was going to mention that, but I very much enjoyed spending time with your team.
No, and we enjoyed hearing from you. You've been such a pioneer in this space. So I'm really very excited to be speaking with you.
Awesome. Awesome. Hey, can you maybe just start us off? Tell us a little bit about your journey, maybe what drew you into maybe e-commerce analytics, and how did some of those early experiences shape the way you think about transformation today?
Yeah, no, it's a fairly long journey. So I started studying mechanical engineering. So I'm a mechanical engineer graduate, so numbers came naturally to me. But during college, I ran a little newspaper, I sold ads, distributed it for free, and I got fascinated by this world of content, media, and I completely changed tracks. And I went on to postgraduate in media and advertising, so from engineering to advertising. And straight out of college, Mindshare hired me. I was buying media for Unilever. And then Unilever said, hey, why don't you come and join us? And I joined their regional strategy team. And it was a great role. So I got to travel every month to a new country. And I got to work with media team, sales, finance. And then I went on to land revenue growth management. And both these roles were heavy on analytics. And at that time, in some ways, e-commerce was the new wave. I couldn't resist myself, so I started leading the e-commerce analytics function. It was a very small business then. So it was about 100 million. When I left, it was 10 billion, which I led globally. And I got to work with the latest tech. I influenced some of the brand innovations, was a part of some of the M&As which we did, which I really enjoyed. And after 13 years at Unilever, today I'm a part of PepsiCo and building capabilities globally, which I'm enjoying a lot as well. And because one of those early guys in e-commerce, and I think e-commerce at that time was such a transformative force by itself. It was so new. And what I did learn was it's just not about the technology. It's not just one thing, it's so many small things you have to keep moving. And what I did learn is that prioritizing 4 or 5 big areas, putting a large vision around it, and having the smartest people to work on those areas. A lot of cross-functional teams, a lot of working in an age, and then, and this has come naturally to the people in e-commerce, is building belief, lots of training, lots of teaching. And so that's probably the muscle I built. And I do believe that we have far more technology than we can ever use.
Yeah.
But just
Yeah.
designing the right processes, the right talent, designing the organization of the
Yeah.
future, and embracing the new ways of working is so crucial.
Yeah, I think to your point, it sounds like you and I had similar paths. Maybe not the mechanic, I was not a mechanical engineer, but similar paths in terms of how we probably got into e-commerce. So many of my friends over the years have been in analytical roles and just some of the best people I've worked with in my career. And I think you're spot on with regards to transformation. I can think back to some prior mentors of mine, current mentors of mine, and you run these very large transformations or you're a part of these transformations. And it comes down to a couple very simple things in my experience. One, I like the way you said you have a couple key initiatives, then you tie your vision around it. I agree with that. I also think that there's this bit of transformative strategy, which is we define our objectives, what those are, and should normally not be more than five, because if we have more than five, we have too many. We design our big bets, which normally also, again, should be three to five. And then we develop our capabilities to enable those big bets. And then in parallel, we optimize the base business. And in many cases, I've seen where transformations go awry is there's not enough choice up front with regards to the objectives being made or the big bets that needed to be developed. And therefore, there's an overemphasis on optimization of the base, which the throughput of all that equals just derivative type of innovation and no true step change in the business. So I love what you said, and I completely agree with you.
No, 100%. And that's what it is. Small little things, one big vision.
Yeah, spot on, spot on. I did want to ask you, you mentioned this earlier. You spent time in various countries and markets in your prior role, and maybe even in your current role, I would imagine. What's maybe something you've noticed about consumer behavior? And I wonder, does it really change a lot, or are there surprising similarities from market to market?
And this is a really good question, and I have thought of it a lot. And when I was in strategy planning, so we used to start every project with an interview with the senior folks there. And this was consistent. Every senior leader felt that their market was unique and the consumers were unique. And it was. But when you really zoom out and speak to consumers, people everywhere are surprisingly similar. And I've done consumer work in the US, China, Australia, India. I don't think the fundamentals change. Yeah, people want a little treat once in a while. People want to be appreciated. They want a little better future for themselves, their families. They're value conscious. Everyone's managing a household budget. But when you start digging a little deeper, that's when you see with the context and the priorities, things start changing a little bit. And it some ways also reflects the way e-com landscape shapes across the world. Yeah. And what does that mean? So, for example, in developing markets, homes are smaller. So people don't have a large pantry to stock up. They don't have the money to make one large purchase. So people shop more frequently. They buy exactly what they need, exactly when they need. And that's when you see rapid delivery, quick commerce, etc., exploding with these small ticket purchases. And for example, markets like China, etc., where trust and quality matter, but given certain experiences, the brand trust is low. So consumers lean on social trust, friends, family, opinion leaders, and that's what gave rise to social commerce. So you see these minor nuances coming in every country, but broadly, the humans and the consumer behavior is fairly similar. And I think Vince says this nicely. He says, look, the technology keeps evolving, but the shopper instinct stays so human. Yeah, it's just about the same.
Yeah, that's a great point. I completely agree with you with regards to what I've seen in various markets, that the human aspect is pretty consistent across no matter where you are in the 8 billion or so people in the world. For the most part, it's roughly similar to every point you just made. And I think what is needs to be accounted for are those regional differences that are very real, where maybe in certain markets, they don't have access to hot water and a large sink. So you develop products that account for that as opposed to another market. But the human element, spot on to your point. And pantry loading in one area of this spinning rock that we're all on, pantry loading looks a certain way. And then in another market, it looks an entirely different way. And that's okay. But underpinning it all is a very probably consistent, I would say, to your point as well, human aspect, which is We all want to do well. We all want to be appreciated. We want a nice treat every now and then. We want our families to be like, so I think you're spot on. And sometimes I guess, the good part probably about analytics and maybe the something as a watch out is we can have numbers tell us anything, but if we do zoom out and we say, okay, what is this really telling us? If we're not trying to tell a story inherently or lead the witness, normally the data has a funny way of telling the truth and allowing us to make have objective opinions about what it's telling us, what we should do with it. And I did want to ask you this. This is also another thing that I found from your team when I met with them is the data is interesting, but for me, it's a three-part equation and has been for many years now. It's the what the data is telling us, what's the three things that we should walk away with, and then the now what. If we can't put the three together, we have an incomplete sentence. And it's not the easiest thing to do, but I'm sure you work with your team and you've developed a skill over the years to be able to say, hey, here's what the data is telling us. Here's why it matters to us. And here's potentially two or three things that we could think about doing with this data. And that's a bit of an art and science that I've seen over the years.
No, 100%. The now what is so important, and it just makes it so actionable, and it really brings alive all that you've done all these weeks, and then you're finally giving a report.
Yeah.
So spot on. And yeah, so I really enjoyed my strategy planning and my insights and those roles a lot.
Awesome. I did want to ask you, at PepsiCo currently you lead e-commerce strategy and transformation for the GCC. Maybe what's one of the most exciting parts about driving digital change that you've experienced either in that region or in another region? Would love just maybe one key thing you've walked away with.
No, I think, look, firstly, we work with many markets, right? So more than a dozen markets, and each of the markets are very different. You have large global customers or retailers like Amazon. So that's what I enjoy on one side, which is, hey, how do you run for a similar retailer? How do you run a Prime Day across 5 markets on the same day? So just that cross application of learnings, keywords, and certain tactics, which we can just almost reapply literally in this next hour. So I enjoy some of that. What I also enjoy a lot is just the frontline view of how e-commerce is changing, given just the wide remit I have. So I run end-to-end capabilities. So whether it's performance marketing, so we are literally the hands-on keys buying media on e-commerce. We are updating close to tens of thousands of product detail pages. So just that is the interaction you have with your shoppers. And the third one is things like perfect digital store, search. The thing which I enjoy is I get to work with really good talent. Okay, so that's always good. Really smart, digitally savvy, much younger than I am. The second thing which I enjoy is just that view of what's happening in the market end to end, literally minute by minute, I just see the changes. And the third thing which I enjoy a lot is just the material change we make to the sales. Like through performance marketing, you can immediately know your media-driven sales. Okay, you know the ROAS, you know the sales, etc. So you can literally attribute it to the media dollars. But also what I really enjoy is that the role of our team in shaping omni-channel. So typically, digital commerce was this one small island earlier, but as digital commerce is becoming bigger and bigger, it's centralizing into the larger organization. And I think we're taking a little bit of that front seat in driving and educating the offline teams and just years of learning how digital shoppers engage with our brands in an omni-channel way. That's the transformation which I am enjoying. So across, for example, shopper marketing, across Perfect Store, across the way we look at our performance offline and online. So those are the things which I drive as a transformation. And I really enjoy educating, driving that bit of change in the markets.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I'll start up first. You and I have been at this for quite a while now. So just newsflash, there are going to be always be people much younger than you and I, because I experience that myself on a daily basis. So you're not alone, my friend. But that's good. We've got young talent. They're smart. They're digitally savvy. And even if they're older talent, they're digital savvy. It's amazing the rate of adoption I'm seeing across cohorts and regions. It's cutting across age groups, and it is really fun to watch the rate of this innovation we're seeing in our space. I think you and I got into e-commerce probably originally because it was exciting and it was new. And I think the great thing for you and I and those on the groups that we serve and support, the space is only going to get more and more interesting as we think about things like AI. This is very real. I was telling my children this the other day. I said, because they think that my wife and I are like 100 years old and there's no kind of parallels. And like when we were children, they didn't have TVs. That's kind of how I'm sure I'm not alone in that. Most parents have this dynamic with their children. But I was telling them that you are going to have, if you have children in their textbooks or digital textbooks, iPads, whatever, they're going to talk about this AI revolution and you will have lived through it. We are at the beginning of it right now. I read something the other day that said what basically AI's reached a certain milestone X times faster than the internet. And I think it was 7X the speed of the internet adoption to a certain number of users. But basically, the headline is the rate of this speed is like nothing we've ever seen, and it's impacting the whole globe. So it's so fascinating for folks like you and I that are in these spaces as we're looking at supply chain. I'm going to get to my next question in a moment, but strategy, supply chain, areas that you and I have spent time in our prior lives, whether it's revenue growth management or commercial roles or any of these types of roles, they're just going to be impacted in such a positive light as we think about the future ahead. Yeah, love your color there. I did want to ask you, how do you think about approaching e-commerce with various aspects of the business in PepsiCo? I know PepsiCo is a great company. You know many folks there. You mentioned Vince, a great guy, great leader. But you have area, it's a big company, one, and there's areas like marketing, supply chain, business strategy. How are you approaching? And I'm sure there's no magic bullet here because I've been in your shoes, but what are you thinking about with regards to how you connect all these very large pieces in a very global organization?
I think that's a really good question. And that's the thing. And I'd really like to post that e-commerce is a P&L. It is a capability, it's a channel, it's all of that. And it's very difficult to put a finger to what e-com is. And given that it's such a large part of the growth, and across companies, this is true. So you do need to make sure that e-commerce is connected. And for example, our search investments can only be effective when our products are available. So that connection with supply chain and our online availability. And so that is crucial. So we definitely connect with supply chain to know, okay, which are the products which are available and we can spend media. But also we get a heads up that there is a supply issue and time to time there is. So we will stop media and we won't plan and we would point media to other SKUs for retail media. So at least the supply chain and online availability, that seems to be connected. Also the content, given the omni-channel transformation, which we are seeing across companies, the content in store, on the shelf, how do we link it? And as a shopper, how do you have that same consistent messages and experience irrespective of where you're shopping? And most shoppers are shopping everywhere. Yeah, so that's the connection we make with the offline teams as well. And again, retail media, brand media, I think the lines are getting blurring. Yeah. And that's the other connection which we have to make is how do we start connecting the upper funnel and the lower funnel? And there is tremendous amount of work saying, okay, along with the marketing team, how do we integrate the digital activation plans, the calendar? How do we drive both paid and organic? How do we drive traffic? So across supply chain, offline, online, brand marketing, and even finance. Okay. So I think finance plays a huge role given our channel. It's unique because you can spend media by SKU. So how do we know how far we can go with our retail media dollars and for which SKU? So we do these connections quite a bit. And for example, and to bring it alive, so for big launches, we have war rooms set up. So where we are bringing together marketing, media, supply chain, finance all together. And so this is something we do almost every day. So there's a war room set up where we track availability, we fine tune our media and adjust many of our plans in real time. But this is still very manual and it's a bit of hard work. And I think this is where tech and data will start connecting and playing a larger and larger role. And we have seen this over the years. And we will start getting a lot more end-to-end visibility of this entire chain. And I feel technology will also make this end-to-end connection far simpler across the org, which today I think needs quite a bit of coordination. Yeah. And that's the change we'll see. But as our role, we are multidisciplinary. We have to engage with most parts of the org, and someday the tech will solve it.
Yeah, I agree with you. The larger the organization, the more complex the orchestration and coordination of the value stream is. Just period, end of statement. And I think, especially in a with a company that is really growing in its space and market leading and really pushing the envelope, which I know Pepsi's doing a great job of. It's certainly you have your hands full. So I know you're doing a great job and the team's very lucky to have you on board. Well, I wanted to ask you here in closing, because it is almost maybe 9:30 at night your time. So I do feel bad. I want to make sure we get you out of here on time. I wanted to ask you one question in closing. As you think about the future, Avi, what excites you the most about the future of e-com and digital transformation at PepsiCo and beyond?
This is my 10th year in digital commerce, and I'm learning every day. And in all these ten years, I've learned every day. But also, I'm very bullish about digital commerce, and I would continue to be. It's driving a large part of the growth. It continues to drive penetration. So digital commerce continues to be more and more penetrated. You can see it all around you. So that's going to grow. Firstly, I think on the shopper side, every shopper will be an omni-channel shopper. And I'm excited about designing these experiences that are consistent across channels. And there will be newer and newer channels emerging. Some of them we don't know, some of them will be discovered. So that's one. So I'm excited about that. And also, I'm quite keen to see what are the new e-commerce models which come up. Okay, so that's the second one. And you mentioned that a little bit, is we don't know how AI is going to shape how commerce works. And this is probably very early days. And we have heard of Sparky and Rufus, and where AI is making choices on your behalf. And that's going to be very interesting space for us. We used to do this where we had perfect store, you have perfect digital store. And then the question is, how does a perfect agentic store start looking? And then you design the shelf for the agent. So that might start looking very differently in terms of what you prioritize and what are the success criterias. So it'd be quite exciting to follow and influence the shoppers in store on the move, and like you were discussing beyond, which is influencing the agents, and that would be probably our next frontier. Yeah,
Nice.
but this space is exciting and it always will be.
Awesome. Awesome. Avi, I wanted to thank you so much for taking some time out of your busy schedule. Apologize, this took us a while. I know we had some scheduling things on both of our side, but really also appreciate the time to sit down with your team. Great group. We've got a great leader, and I'm sure the audience will very much enjoy this session with you today. With that being said, thank you so much, Avi.
Thanks so much, Don, and thanks for this years of coaching, teaching, and sharing so selflessly.
Of course. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the CPG View, the #1 CPG information source for global omni-channel leaders.